Hey everybody, it's Dave Duford here from Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you succeed in selling life insurance. And I am super excited today because I am having one of the principal people that through his time and effort brought me into this business on for today's interview. So I am sitting down with Mr. John Duggar. And I want to give you a little bit of introduction before we pop in, because you're going to be in for a nice treat for a deep dive into how an expert final expense agent does fantastic business. So a little bit about John Duggar. John Duggar, just some interesting facts here. He has written now in excess of $2.25 million in final expense business since he started. That's a lot of business. He hit 2 million just last May. And before getting into final expense, he wrote about $1 million in term insurance and almost 1,000 Medicare Advantage plans. Last year, at the end of his 2017 production, he wrote $235,000 in final expense on 320 applications, and probably another $50,000 or so on other plans like indemnity plans, Medicare supplements, that kind of thing. And he is closing approximately 43% of his final expense leads. And for every $100 every lead that he buys, he's writing about $318 in premium again, which is pretty substantial. Did I get that numbers right there, John?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
The homework you sent me, you made me look that stuff up. But.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just good numbers. It's worth sharing. So yeah, like I said today, guys, the reason I had John on this call here, or having him on, is because John, a little bit just about my background here with John. When I got into final expense in 2011, I was in the midst of having a business that was failing, and I was looking for something to do. And the last thing I thought about selling was final expense, or much less life insurance. And I stumbled across the insurance forums and saw John's posts. And I remember at that time, John was just working 15 leads a week instead of the 10 I think he's working now, if not less, and writing $4,000 in premium. I was just totally stoked. And the way John explained it was very simple business, and gave me the encouragement to get into this business. So anyways, with that all said and done, John, welcome so much to the interview today. Thank you for joining.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into a series of questions here. Why don't you start with telling me about your background and what got you involved in selling insurance in the first place?
Okay. Well, first, I didn't know I recruited you, but
yeah, you did.
Welcome aboard.
Silently.
Well, my background is labor union. I worked for a major tire manufacturer for 18 years. It was, and all the time I was involved in the union with that. Became a union steward probably within the first 6 months of working there, and executive board member. Went to school with the union, become a time study engineer. So I was the local union time study engineer because we were on piecework, kind of like now. Through the ranks of the union, vice president, ended up president of the local, and was also benefits representative for the local, which, unknowing to me at the time, was what led me into insurance, I guess, later in life. Having that background of the benefits and knowing kind of the ins and outs and negotiations also, with my first involvement with Medicare was in international negotiations for the benefits for the retirees. And, just like anyone new to Medicare now, it was like learning a foreign language. The Part B premium. My first master negotiations, it's funny to look back on it now, but with my company, they pay the retirees Part B premium. And it was a big issue at that time because Medicare had just raised that premium to $25 a month.
Oh, wow.
And the company was balking at having to pay that exorbitant premium for retirees. So funny how things that you did back then you had no idea was going to lead to later on. But anyway, the plant ended up closing, and I had a little over 18 years at the plant at that time. And then I went to work for the International Union, AFL-CIO. I was a field coordinator for the AFL-CIO. We were under contract with the U.S. Department of Labor. The division I was in the education division, and I handled Kentucky, Tennessee, most of Tennessee, not all of Tennessee, most of Indiana, and Southern Illinois was basically my territory. But we helped students get jobs out of Job Corps, monitored them, see if they were going to work. Most of the unions have programs at the Job Corps centers. The cement masons union, the bricklayers, construction, carpenters, different trades. And it was my job to place them with employers, get them a place to live, help them get transportation, monitor for 90 days to see that they were going to work and all that. Quite enjoyable work. It wasn't what I like to do as far as the union part of negotiations, arbitration, things like that, but it was still working with the union. And of course, my time with the tire company kept going because I was still, working through the union. And long story short, this is how that ended. And when we signed a 5-year contract in 1999 with the U.S. Department of Labor, when George W. Bush got elected, not George W., Daddy Bush, I should call him, got elected in 2000. One of his first executive orders was to mandate that there be no contracts, that the federal government have no contracts with labor unions. As I said, we had just signed a 5-year contract in 1999. It didn't matter that we were the only government contractor that came in every year over projections and under budget. We were union. So in 2004, when that 5-year contract came up for renewal and Bush was still president, I was looking for work again. I did transfer to the Kentucky State AFL-CIO to keep my time going through the others. So I was basically, but I knew the handwriting was on the wall. That wasn't going to be forever. So I was, for the first time in my life, was looking for a job. And since I was 18 years old. And everything steered me to insurance because I worked for myself as the AFL-CIO. And so once you've worked for yourself, as you know, it's hard to work for someone else, and you want to work for yourself. So everything was steering me to independent insurance agent, so you could continue to work for yourself. And since I had the background in benefits that I alluded to earlier, I knew some insurance talk. So that was why everything steered me into insurance. And it's also why I didn't want to do insurance. Dealing with insurance companies on a daily basis was not something I wanted to continue. But I went to work for American General. They told me they would, at a place about 40 miles south of here, the office I went to work for, they matched my salary for 6 months with the AFL-CIO, and was put on what they called a fast track. I didn't know what that meant. You're too naive at that point to get in to really understand what they're doing. But anyway, they promised me they'd show me the ropes and help me get my license and teach me how to sell life insurance. And it was, I'm totally opposed, was then, to door knocking, cold calling, that kind of stuff. And I made that clear to them through the whole interview process, that I was not going to be what I called the Amway guy. You know, the reason I didn't move with Goodyear, I've shown horses all my life. And maybe if you can see in the background, the only saddle I still own today, if you can see it in the background, a trophy saddle.
Oh, yeah.
I showed all my life, and that's why I could have moved with the company, and I chose not to because of that. And that's what I was telling the American General people. I'm not going to be the Amway guy. I'm not going to be the guy going to horse shows and running around to all my friends. You know, I got this new insurance for you, you know, because you know how that works with people. You know what I'm talking about. You know,
you lose all your friends suddenly.
yeah. Ex-friends and family and all. And they told me, no, we don't want you to do that. No, we don't want to do that. We want you. Our real problem is our work site term. And that's what we want you to do. And so I had contacts all over the states I mentioned earlier because I dealt with employers. So I had contacts with all those folks, plus showing horses all over the Midwest. And so I had a lot of contacts, and they said, that's what, you know, we can't get anybody to do that. And of course, me going through the interview process, and it's something I'm going to mention later to you based on what you had said to me about, you know, agents don't ask the right questions of the people training them. Well, you don't know what the right questions are. And so I didn't ask the right stuff. I didn't, to me, I was saying, why, I should have asked, why won't your agents sell that worksite term? And
good point, yeah.
I didn't. I found out later that the reason they won't is because they were doing a payroll deduction on it. So, to me, I'm saying, what am I missing here? And, what I was missing was they pay 30% commission on it, and they base it on a 10-month year. I've never heard of a company that, so basically, if you sold a policy with them $100 a month, which is $1,200 annual premium, you actually got $1,000 credit into they called it your matrix. You built your matrix. This has been 14 years ago now, so the stuff I say about them now may not even be pertinent today. But you had a matrix, and over that 6-month time, you put production just like that into your matrix, and then you were going to be paid 9% per week of what was in your matrix. That's how their pay scale worked. If you had $100,000 in your matrix, you got $900 a week. Kind of that was the math. And then so a $100,000 a year producer, which was really a $120,000 a year producer, because you only got 10-month year, would make $45,000 a year. With them. Wow. Now there's but then they had a bonus thing and stuff. So of course, I didn't stay with them long enough to really understand how that worked. But as I found out later, I was completely lied to through the interview process. They had no intentions of me doing the worksite term to start with. And as I was going through the training and doing the modules, and back then, you had to do, after you did a lot of tests, you had 40 hours of classroom training in Kentucky to get your license. I don't know if that's changed either, but in 2004 you did. And while going through that and getting the process, they started talking about call night. And I was going to have to go to Hopkinsville, Kentucky on Monday evenings while they lorded over you while you were on the phone calling your leads.
Boiler room.
Which was another thing. They didn't have leads. They had what they call Project 100, which is a book they give you that you fill out, contacts, family, and so forth. Well, I didn't know what that was either. And so they gave me those books. when I first started to fill out. And I filled up 3 of those Project 100 books, probably in 3 days. Because, like I said, I had contacts everywhere. I didn't know that was going to be on call night. That's who you were going to be calling. And then they also started talking about we would just do canvassing. The guy would say, oh, some days we'll just drive up to a neighborhood and park, and we'll just start walking through there and knocking on doors. No, I'm not going. I told you up front I wasn't going to do that.
Right.
And he said, oh, no, yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do. And so I was very unhappy with my choice, and I decided I would only stay there until I could get my license to use, maybe I could use my license, my insurance license to get a job. And so that was my only goal at that point. And when I did go to Frankfurt and I passed my test, and I called the supervisor on my way back to tell him that I would not be, it did this on a Friday. I called him to tell him I would not be back. This wasn't going to work for me. I knew that was the case too before I left on the last Thursday that I worked at that office. And so I took all my stuff with me. They gave you a little laptop. I did leave that because it was theirs. But I took my Project 100 books with me. And, really that was the biggest point of contention I had with them in leaving. And I'm sure they were glad that I was telling them up front that it wasn't going to work out.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Spend any more time on me. And I was glad to be getting out of there. But they demanded that I bring those books back.
Of your contacts is what you're saying, right?
Yes. And I refused. No, those are mine. That was an argument we had. Those are mine. They said they were theirs. That was their property. And
wow.
I said, okay. They are your property. They're your books. I'll redact all the information of them, and you can have your books back. And no, they wanted the information. They were going to have other agents contact my contacts. Right. And then they were threatening me with vectoring me over it, which I had no idea what vector was at the time anyway. And today I know they couldn't even do that over that, but I didn't know that, but I didn't care either. My last conversation with them was do what you need to do.
Right.
And never heard from them after that. And so then I was trying to get a job again. Still, everything steering me to insurance, but no, I wasn't going to do insurance. This is not for me. And there was nothing wrong with American General Insurance. It was the way they wanted you to sell insurance. They wanted you to call a person and give them a rate quote that maybe only a marathon runner qualify for, and then get in the house and sell something else.
Right.
And that didn't, just not for me. While I was trying to get a job, and now I had a license. So when you put that on your resume, you get a whole lot of insurance people contacting you, as you know. And I'd say it's probably worse today, but anyway, I ran across a fellow just by pure dumb luck who had been a tire builder at the same company that I worked for. And he had also been a division chairman with the union, but he was at the Danville, Virginia plant, not my plant. And he had quit and said he started an insurance company. He said he thought there had to be a better way. And he hooked me up with the guy in Kentucky that headed up his division, he called it. And Michael Leventowitz was the guy's name. And he and I hit it off pretty well. this was NAA, of course, and Philip Hudgens was the founder of NAA, was the guy who worked for was a tire builder
Mm-hmm.
and a union guy. And he basically told me, do it my way. Give it 6 months doing it our way. Don't do it their way. Do it my way. And regardless of the multi-level crap and the Amway system of NAA today and what it became then, at that point they were fairly new, and he had a vision to build a foundation on production.
This is Hudgens, right?
Yes, Philip Hudgens did. Yeah, and he had to build these on production, and regardless of the rest of his model, and Philip Hudgens can sell insurance. He was in the trenches. Andy Albright with it, Andy probably a marketing genius. Andy Albright couldn't sell a life insurance policy that saved his life. He'll admit to that too. He'll tell you he can't sell. He said he can recruit people, but he can't sell it. But anyway, that was I got with them, and I had a commitment to the FLCL, and I still had to get my time in. So I was starting part time anyway, and I started. I guess the model was 55% contracts to start with NAA at the time. But I didn't even realize, I didn't know what an IMO was, an FMO. I actually thought I was going to work for an insurance company.
Right, yeah.
Oh, it's called NAA, And then they had leads. That was their thing, their leads. But for some reason, they started me at 65% contract, which I thought was wonderful. How you even pay somebody at 65%? And they started me at 65%, and I want to say it was either $14 leads, but they might have been $12.
What a deal.
But that was the main thing, the lead. And I got 5 a week. I started with 5 leads a week and 65% contract. And I don't know why I took to this, that was, now I did listen. I learned the Hudgens system inside and out because I didn't know anything about selling insurance. The story was always after, I took off so fast that Mike Leventolis would tell him at the meetings that I told him that I was going to learn their way so that if it didn't work, I could blame them. I don't really remember saying that, but it sounds like something I might have said. So I never argued the point that I might have said it. But I didn't know. And never sold anything, that in my life. Never been on commission at that point. I've done piece work, building tires, so my income my whole life has been based on production, really. So, if you built more tires, you got more money.
So were you selling mortgage protection with an AA at that point, John, or
yeah.
were you getting, where did final expense come into this? Was it?
Okay, so anyway, as I was doing that, and I became my first month at 5 leads a week, I did $12,000 production, and they moved me to 70% contract. And then I think their scale is if you do 15,000 2 months in a row, you get moved to 75%. So shortly, it took me just a few months. I was at 75%. And then to get to 80%, you had to do 25,000 2 months in a row. But you also have to do it incremental. You couldn't do, 25,000 2 months in a row and jump from 65 to 80.
Yeah, right.
You still had to do it incrementally. And by spring of 2005, I was at 80. And then, and I was still part-time though. And I was going through but things were going really well. I'm on an 80% contract, 5 leads a week, doing 20,000 a month. And then I went full time. I was able to go full time probably in June 2005. And then I jumped it up to 10 leads a week since I was able to commit more time. And, you know, I ended up 2005. I ended up that year as a top 15 agent with NAA. I did about 260,000 on 10 leads a week, or the first 4 or 5 months of the year on 5 leads a week. Everything was going great. You know, I got an IMO trip that we went to, and that was, you know, I still didn't know anything. I knew they were moving into recruiting more, but they.
Oh, so they weren't at the recruitment hustle that they.
No, it came up at meetings. We had a call every Monday that I always participated in, and then, but in Louisville, which is a little over a 2-hour drive for me, they had a meeting once a month that they wanted you to go. So it was once a month I drove to Louisville to this meeting, and they were always giving you bonus. They were giving bonus checks at those meetings. I always got a check. I always liked going to Louisville too, because you got to meet with people who are doing the same thing you're doing, but you also always got a check too, you know. But when we were on that IMO trip in the summer of 2005, and my first month of really full time getting 10 leads, I did 45,000, and that was what earned me that trip. So it was later in that summer, but we were on that trip. But I don't golf, and you know, showing horses. I tell people that, you know, golf courses are a waste of good pasture land. But on this IMO trip, they talked me into doing a scramble with these guys, because they were going to do they had 3 teams, and you need 4 people, and they had 11 guys. And so they talked me into being the 12th. So that's one of the few golfing outings I've been on in my life. But the guy who was the head of the master agency at that time, he just kept going on, and I was in his group, about how his bonus from F&G the month before was $35,000. And that, it wasn't that, but he just kept adding in that it was non-chargebackable. Just non-chargebackable. And I just couldn't understand what's the big deal about that. You know, I mean, I by that time I had enough time, I knew what a chargeback was. But, you know, why is your selling point on that it's not chargebackable? I didn't understand. I do now, of course.
Sure.
At that time I didn't. But my upline, that was where that bonus money was coming from. You know, they were good enough. They didn't put that bonus money in their pocket, all of it. They would give it to the agents, you know. And they were, you know, they were talking recruiting, but I was naive enough to believe that they would leave me alone about it. I had told them I had no interest in recruiting, and they were okay with it, or seemed to be. Then we get into 2006, and I had a real problem with, F&G was very difficult to deal with, and that was their company, you know. IMOs have their companies they want people to write, you know. F&G was theirs. And that's how I actually got involved with foresters at the time. And they knew if F&G was a problem. They brought foresters on. Foresters was going to be the answer to the F&G problems. They weren't, but that was the story. I like Shenandoah better than any of the companies they had. They didn't want us writing Shenandoah. As I look back on it now, Shenandoah didn't bonus them the way the other companies did.
Right.
But I asked my upline early in January. I went to the NAA convention in Atlanta, Georgia in January of 2005. And that was a big plus to me. On the questionnaire you sent me about why I do the leads and stuff, I can explain that when we get there. But I wasn't going to go in 2006. You know, I'm not into the rah-rah stuff of that, and they're really big into rah-rah. And they were going, and I was starting to have trouble getting my 10 leads a week. But I also asked them about if I could write Shenandoah. If they had a problem with me writing Shenandoah, and they said, no, that's fine. So Shenandoah became my go-to in 2006. And I was writing quite a bit of Shenandoah. But my leads kept getting harder to get. I wasn't getting 10. I almost never got 10 a week anymore. And I never got 10 in a week in the same geographic area. It started into the summer about getting maybe, I might get 8 leads. 2 of them would be a 2-hour drive to the east. 2 of them might be an 1.5-hour drive to the west. 3 of them might be an hour north. No way to plan a schedule, you know. I mean, they are the best leads I've ever worked to this day, the NAA leads. But it doesn't matter how good the leads are, you can't drive all over, you know, the earth, you know, to work them efficiently. And I also have back trouble, and I have most of my life. Every now and then I'll have a problem now and with back trouble. And I believe your background, Dave, I think you were physical therapy and all, and you know, if you have back trouble, that riding around a car all day
it's no good.
Worse on your back than going out and playing basketball for 2 hours.
Right. Yep.
And so I was having back troubles, and now I was having to travel all over the place. And just by pure dumb luck, which seems like how a lot of things happen, a fellow in Evansville, Indiana, sent in a lead card, mortgage protection lead card. So I called him to set an appointment. And it's an insurance company. He answers as an insurance company. Well, you know how agents will do that now, you know.
Yeah, screwballs.
Who calls them. And I'm thinking that's what happened. And I'm about to hang up on the guy. And, and the reason I knew his insurance, he answered as of, Penn Solutions, whatever the name he was going by at the time. And he goes, oh, wait a minute, no, I didn't send this in. I wasn't faking a lead or anything for you. I do Medicare. And I need a policy. I want a return of premium term policy. And none of the companies I have that available. So I set an appointment with him, went to Evansville, we met at a restaurant, then sold the guy a policy. And then we got talking about what do you do, Medicare Advantage, I had no difference between Medicare, Medicare Advantage, any of the stuff, like no one does, if you're not involved with that. And he was telling me about this new Medicare Advantage plan backed by the government. That was his story, and how they were doing it. Of course, my first question was, where do you get leads? I'm having trouble with my leads. And he said, well, we furnish the leads. Now, well, at what cost? And two, I was telling you, I started at a $12 or $14 lead. Well, also, as you move up incrementally in your contracts with NAA, the lead cost goes up. So I was also at a 80% contract, but now it's paying $28 a lead. And 13 years ago. And
wow.
And so he was saying, well, the leads are free. And I said, well, I might be interested. And, he was, hey, look, I didn't send this in to hire an agent. I sent this in to, buy insurance. And he said, but if you're interested, I hire agents all the time. And I said, well, Yeah. I said, and where would you go? Because, I'm getting tired of all this driving too because of my back. And he's all, 30-minute radius of Evansville, Indiana, 30, 40-minute radius, is all you're going to go. And I said, well, I might be interested in that. And he said, well, why don't you just come ride with me a day when you have time and see if it's even something you want to do. Which, looking back on, was pretty smart of him. And so I did that. And he sold every home we went into. Of course, it was the day he was selling pyramid. He had sold all these people on pyramid med subs. And they had this deal where you were going in with pyramid at that time. They had probably the best Medicare Advantage thing going. It was $35 a month. And at $5 to see a doctor, $10 to see a specialist, a $100 copay at the hospital one time, not per day. But you were
Back
going
in the
around.
glory days of Medicare Advantage, that's for sure.
Yeah, you were going around to your current customers on med subs and telling them, let me put you on this plan. I'm going to save you $150 a month. And you can try it. If you don't like it, you can go right back to yourself. Well, no wonder everybody was trying it, And so anyway, I got involved with doing that after doing that. And I pretty quickly became their number one agent with, that's easy. It's, Medicare Advantage is not selling, it's order taking. And that's why you see agents who can sell life insurance, man, they can take off with Medicare Advantage if they want to. Where the vice versa of that is not true. Agents who have only done Medicare Advantage and then try to throw in some final expense, they don't make it very often. There's a few that do, but because they're not used to selling. They're not used to asking for a check.
Right.
And but anyway, I took to it. It was really great. And of course, they were telling me, one reason I wasn't getting my leads with NAA, I was starting to have a problem with them because I didn't recruit. And they put a guy in Evansville that was building a team. He had like 80 agents or something. And I'm saying, hey, are my local leads going to him? And they said, no, you're our guy. You're our number one guy. It's just, it's just how it is. It's, the leads, it's the market. And I believed them. And then also in that fall, even though and they knew I was doing the Medicare Advantage. They acted like it wasn't a problem. But then later on, it apparently was. But I said something, the guy was saying about my leads, I said, his team, and I knew the guy who was building the team, and he's a great guy. He and I were friends. But I'm saying, and they were saying no, and then the guy, we were in Louisville at one of those meetings, it was September or so of that year, and I was saying, look, I'm not getting 10 leads a week, and when I do get the leads, they're so far. And then the guy said, yeah, well, part of the problem is you write Shenandoah. And I said, well, yeah, but I asked you if I could write Shenandoah. And he said, well, yeah, you did, but things change. I said, well, Mike, I understand things change, but it'd been nice being informed of this change. But I wasn't. And but they were you could kind of tell they were kind of done with me anyway because I wouldn't recruit. And I had a problem. They brought in one of their superstars maybe it was that meeting from Texas. And he kept talking about he was doing $1 million a year, $1.8 million a year, something like that. And part of his spiel, though, was you should be recruiting every person you sell a policy to. And then he took it one step further to say, if you don't offer this opportunity to every person that you sell a policy to, you are scum. And then he repeated that. Man. I'm telling you, you're scum. course, I took great exception to that, but I'm at someone else's meeting.
You're right.
The only reason I didn't leave at that point was because of my respect for them, and I thought that they had been honest with me all along. And so I didn't say anything there. I went home, but I did send an email as soon as I got into the upline that I didn't say anything out of respect to him. But if I'm ever in a meeting again and somebody calls me scum, I will not remain quiet. They apologized for the guy and didn't mean it like I took it. And so then the next meeting I'm there, and this is where I really saw the handwriting on the wall. And I had done about $35,000 a month before production. And of course, they weren't having me speak anymore because they didn't want me saying to the other recruits in the room that I didn't recruit. And I wasn't getting those bonus checks anymore either. And they were going to people who where you used to get, a check for production, you started getting checks by how many recruits you got that month. But the thing that really told me, there was one of the guys who got up, was one of the, they called this like a three-person agency, but there really was one person in charge of the whole thing, and then Mike and this other guy were kind of co-equals that answered to the other guy. But Mike's partner, he got up, as part of his speech was, if you could have your agency, if you could have one agent that did $30,000 per month, or if you had 10 agents that did $30,000 total, which would you rather have? Well, to me, one guy does $30,000. That wasn't their answer. Their answer was the 10. Of course, part of the NAA model is, too, they make money on the leads, and they resell the leads. So they're talking for them as much as anything. They're going to make money, 10 agents are going to buy more leads than one agent is.
That's a good point.
And then also, and they said, then their point was, but you never know when one of those 10 becomes a $30,000 producer too. But I took that they were directing that directly at me. And I was doing pretty well now with this, with the Medicare Advantage. So I just quit getting leads. I told them I don't want any more leads anyway. And they're all over the country. You're not getting me 10 a week. And so get into 2007, and I'm really rolling with the Medicare Advantage. And by this time, I have added Coventry and then WellCare. The greatest thing going out there. And but the company I was with bought the term policy. Well, he was right. They didn't have very many products other than that. And they did have a final expense that they wanted you to cross-sell. But it was just terrible. And it was probably, I don't even know if they had a level coverage on it.
Wow.
It was a 2 or a 3 year wait, and it was just priced crazy. And so this is my first time selling final expense, because now I'm dealing with seniors almost exclusively. And there were some opportunities to sell final expense. So I picked up Lincoln Heritage. That's how I got. First final expense policy I ever sold in my life was Lincoln Heritage. And believe it or not, Lincoln Heritage was a far superior product to what that company had.
Right.
And so I'm writing Lincoln Heritage and, too, and doing, so now I'm getting leads from Lincoln Heritage. Now, their leads were pretty bad at the time. And of course, if I could work them today, they may not be as bad as I thought they were at the time. But their leads, the great thing about their leads were almost all of our people, all the people sending in the Lincoln Heritage leads at that time were people on Medicaid.
Ah, okay, right.
So I had that WellCare, they called it the Duet plan, which was for dual eligibles. And it was great. I mean, it was, and everything in that day was private fee for service. All doctors accepted them. You know, that plan, it couldn't be called an SNP because it was private fee for service. It wasn't an HMO. But it was zero premium. You learn you can't say free in that business. It's zero premium. It had maybe a $10 copay at the doctor, but Medicaid picked that up anyway, paid that for them. And whatever the copay at the hospital, Medicaid was taking care of. It fully coordinated with Medicaid. It gave them $1,000 a year dental. It gave them $300 a year eyeglasses, and it gave them $40 a month into dentals. That was like things, Band-Aids, insulin needles, things like that. So, you know, even if I couldn't sell final expense to them off the Lincoln Heritage leads, I could sell this. And this was all pre-MIPA now, when you could do this. And so it was just rolling along. Well, then about that time, I get contacted by NAA, my former IMO, wanting to know if I would run some leads, if they get them to me free. Well, of course I would, you know. They said, we'll be sending you some leads because, they was wanting me to write business. Even though they weren't going to make any money on those leads, they still made money on their override. And that was when the bottom fell out with me with them, because even though they started sending me free leads, they started sending me 5, 6, 7 free leads per week. Well, those leads were all in my area. They were in Evansville, Indiana. They were in Hopkins County, Kentucky, where I live. They were in Henderson County, just north of me, where I couldn't get them before, and they were telling me they just didn't have them. They weren't preferred. That was just like sending you a stack of papers that said, "Hey, we've been lying to you for 2 years."
And all this time, you're writing the big premium too. I mean, it's not like
I had believed them too. That was right. Kind of. I was more upset because I had believed them. So anyway, that's how. And then so I just told them, I don't even want any more of your free leads either. And so I was just rolling with and I was doing great. I wasn't doing a whole lot of production with Lincoln Heritage. Maybe 40,000 was my best year with Lincoln Heritage on their final expense. But I was getting, 1 year, my 1099 from just WellCare alone was over $100,000. And I had become the top agent with 3 different MA companies in this area. And I was getting free leads from WellCare. WellCare was sending me leads themselves. And I'll tell you that those weren't leads, those were checks. Those were, because you didn't have to sell it. It was usually somebody that had a WellCare drug plan, and they contacted the company. Yeah, we got a guy right in your area, and at that time we got $400 per enrollment, but you got $440 if you did it by phone. Of course, you did it by phone. Certainly you did it by phone.
Right.
So it was just, it was just great business, no problem with acceptance, with private fee for service in this area. I can only speak to my area. I understand in other parts of the country they're having a hell of a time with that, but we weren't. And so then roll into 2008, and the devil comes out with their MIPA rules. to cut commissions, and that was a company I never would write. I never would write Humana at all. Kind of wish I liked them. They're a Kentucky-based company, but no, I'm not going to write them. Wouldn't write them then. Won't write them now. But they pushed that commission cut and the MIPA rules that came about, they started in the summer of 2008, and it was implemented basically that fall. And
let me interrupt you, John, real quick, just for the guys watching this. This is when Medicare Advantage used to be free run. You could cold call for leads. You could sell off of other types of leads. And then the government really clamped down on really business practices and made it much more difficult business overall. So it's
did so at Humana's bidding.
Right.
It's funny. They had proof of that. Rick put it up on the forum, and I guess he got blasted for it. And he had the proof of the letter of who was behind it. I guess they made him take it off there. And big business is big business.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And but anyway, the scope of appointment came in at that time and all. But they did make an exception for that year. That you could contact all Medicare Advantage agents had what we call a November file. Anybody doing Medicare know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's people that you met with during the year who weren't dual eligible, who didn't have an SEP, who weren't getting extra help, could not enroll till annual enrollment came around in November. So you would put those in your file. So I'll see you in November. And they did, CMS did make an exception in 2008 that you could go ahead and contact all those people you had told that you were going to contact without getting a scope in advance. But you had to get a scope signed once you were there. It's funny, you got to keep those things for 10 years. I just wrote a guy last week. Another policy, I wrote him several over the years. It was one of the first people I had that scope on, and you got to keep them. I know that I still have that in his file, scope of appointment from 2008 for him. And but the handwriting was on the wall there too. Of course, they cut your commissions, of course, in half. And then you only got the full if it was what they call a true up. So they were cutting commissions, came in with ridiculous rules, and so I'm looking again. And, I don't think I'm long for this. And I had found the forum in 2008, earlier in 2008, and I found the insurance forum because I was researching. The guy who did the training on it really didn't know what he was doing. And but you didn't know that at the time, and I had messed some folks up, but fortunately I was able to correct that, and he was giving me information about Medicare supplements that I didn't think was correct. I had learned to not trust this guy. I found the forum by researching the things he was telling me about Medicare. And I got set straight real quick by Frank Stastny and Rick Bonstein with my questions. And they actually thought that, I'm sure looking back on it, they were pretty rough on me at the beginning, but I think they thought I was spamming it. You know how people will pose something as a question on an insurance form that they really know, but to get hits and to get contacts, And they probably that's what I was doing because the questions I was asking were so ridiculous. But I wasn't. Frank Stastny and I became really good friends after that. They talked to him a lot, about, stuff. And Frank Stastny sold a lot of final expense. Cross-selling, leading with Medicare and selling it to people that he, and Frank was very helpful to me a lot. You know, we talked a lot. And even though I don't use a CRM or anything, I didn't use his yo-yo system. And before anybody gets their feelings hurt, I know it's not a yo-yo. I know it's why Frank and I called it yo-yo to Frank. But Frank, he sent me his sales system in hard copy. Never paid him anything. Didn't have any contracts under him. And stuff. But then through the forum, I met Scott. Even though it was 35 miles apart, I'd never met Scott Bird. And then Scott, I picked up a forethought contract with Scott because Lincoln Heritage had some really, like at the time, and I don't know if this has changed, but at the time you couldn't even do level coverage if the person was taking Plavix. So I basically picked up forethought for those people who were on Plavix that I couldn't write. And that was my second final expense contract. And so then I'm finding out about other companies through the forum. And and of course, leads are your lifeblood. And the Lincoln Heritage leads, they were only good for these dual eligible, basically, to me. And now we're going to be able to do that. And so I get a call from Travis Tubbs, probably August, September 2008. I don't know if he got me through the forum or he got me through the forum through Scott. Scott and Travis already had some business together at that time. And Travis calls me up to basically, and Travis was there. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know. If there's anybody selling final expense that's wrote more Medicare Advantage plans than I have, it's Travis Tubbs. So, you know, we talked about that and all that, and he was telling me he had gone to he was going with a partner with a new company to have leads. And he wanted to know if I wanted to come join them and do a final expense and have leads. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested, yes. And then he told me it was Equita. Well, then I was no. Because while I was having trouble getting leads from NAA in 2006, I had contacted EMG, or EMG contacted me, Equita Mortgage Group. And I did get some of their leads, and they were terrible. And just didn't have a good experience with them. They were wanting you to sell Marico, too, on their leads. And I just didn't have a good experience with them, and I told him, no, I don't like those people. And he assured me that even though it was the same ownership, that it was two completely different divisions, Equita Mortgage Group versus Equita Final Expense Service. So, you know, he and I hit it off pretty well, so I said, well, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And so that's how I got involved with Equita, going to do final expense. This was going to be my last year, you know, doing of course, Medicare Advantage, my last AEP, because of the new rules. So at that time, you signed up, I believe I paid $225, or it might have been $300. I believe it was $300. And that included your first 15 leads at $15 a piece. And an ID badge and business cards. So $75 was for your ID badge and your business cards, and then we go have a drink on. And then the leads. And they started sending me leads. And part of it was me, part of it was their leads, but they were terrible, you know. And trying to set appointments on those leads, and Equita's, you know, it's a hard name to say, it's a funny name to say, nobody's ever heard of Equita. And I didn't understand I didn't understand their PPL system. I know you had 2 writing numbers, and you had hire a contract on one. And I was writing a lot of business with them, but I wasn't writing it with, I was writing them on my, I don't even know which is retail, which is wholesale, but I was writing on my number to pay me more because they weren't people I were getting for their leads. And then they were complaining apparently to Travis about that. You know, I'm doing, you know, I'm just getting rolling with them and writing $8,000-9,000 a month, and they're complaining. But I'm not writing anything on the proper, apparently. And so my PTL is way low, which I don't understand what that means either. And and Ryan and I just could not get along. We could not get along. It was, I think I told Travis at one time if I could meet Ryan in person, I'd punch him in the mouth. And Travis was kind of the buffer between us two, and they cut my leads off because I wasn't doing very good. And I wasn't. I can't argue that I was. And but that was my last AEP starting then too. I had all these people to contact, so I didn't really care if they cut my leads off. And I wrote a ton of Medicare Advantage, that AEP, maybe 85 or so of them, and writing a little final expense, you know, across some. And so then it gets into January, and we're going in. I'm through with my AEP, and I decide that okay. And Travis called me. He could get my leads turned back on if I would commit to doing it, and I told him okay. I will. I'm going to commit to this starting, you know. And at that time, too, you also had your AEP, but you also had the month of January. They had some acronym they called it. But it was almost like still being an AEP. And I said, I'm going to finish out this month of January, but starting February 1st, I am all in on final expense. You know, I'm going to put my business with Equita. I'm going to work those leads. You know, I'm either going to sink or swim with this deal. So I started, I did about 6,000 final expense business in January of 2009 with the full intent of starting February 1st. I'm a final expense guy. And we had what they still call the ice storm of the century. I believe it was January 27th, 2009, 26, 27. Anyway, we were out of power for 2 weeks. And some of my neighbors even longer. And didn't have power, didn't have, you know, a lot of damage here. And I'm trying to start a new career. So, but I also think that, you know, if you're a final expense guy, girl, you know, $10,000 a month is kind of your thing. You know, you're not really full time and giving this if you're not writing 10,000. Now that not be the be all end all, but that's what I think. I had to write a policy on myself on February 28th, 2009, to hit 10,000. Because it's just a mental thing, but basically because I have power 2 weeks. But now to this day, you know, I'm more about consistency than I am big numbers. The last time I did not write 10,000 in a month was January 2009. Quick math, wow. I was at 111 months, you know. But I also went to a meeting, an Equita meeting in Indianapolis, Indiana, that Travis put on. And they bring in, and of course, Ryan. This is the first time I meet Ryan. I had decided by then I wasn't going to punch him in the mouth, but we still weren't buddies. and met Ryan, met Eric. More importantly, met Eric Brennan. Tim Wonders. Tim Wonders was at that meeting.
Cool.
You know him at the forum as Biggin, Kevin, was at that meeting. Dan Runge at that time was big in violent expense.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
And was at that meeting. And so I meet all those guys, go to dinner with them, and you know, you get to know people. And Ryan and I didn't become friends there, but we didn't leave as enemies. Eric Brennan, man, is super. I mean, I can't say enough about Eric Brennan. He's an honorable man. That's what I'd say. Straight shooter. And Ryan is too, as I know now. But doing 15 leads a week, and at that time I got my PPL up even because I wasn't getting leads, of course. So when you're not getting leads and writing business, your PPL goes up. And that was one of the slides that Ryan put up at that meeting. I had my PPL up to like $220. But I wasn't getting the lead credit for it because that has to be a 90-day rolling period. And I didn't have the time. But at least I was heading in the right direction. And then we talked about how things were going, how it worked, and stuff. And plus getting to meet Travis and Dan Runge and learn from those guys and Tim Wonders and soak up that knowledge, and Kevin, you know, and to learn from those guys and that this is what you're doing. And I was amazed. I go to dinner with Dan Runge, and he tells me he spent $50,000 on leads in 2008, the prior year. And I'm thinking, you know, and then Travis tells me the same thing. That's why he's partnering with Equita. He spent $50,000 on lead mailers. Tim Wonder, same thing, $60,000. And of course, it also tells you, you know, all these guys were $200,000 producers. That also tells you, well, you kind of have to do what they're doing. And too, you know, and if you want to be what they're doing. And so I left there, and things really started rolling, was going good, and they really wanted me to bump my leads to 20 a week. That was kind of a thing. You're going to really need to get them to 20 a week. You don't need to stay at this 15. So that spring, I bumped them to 20 a week. Okay, you beat me. You got me down. I'm going to do it. Well, they started sending me 20 a week. But then they were like in 5 counties. You know,
all over the place in rural Kentucky.
This is not going to work. And we're Arkansas, and that goes on for a couple of weeks. And so I'm calling Travis, you know, and you know, anybody that's ever worked with me, if you'll tell them, I don't complain about leads. Yeah, Scott now, yes, people at Equita, you know, but so that was kind of unusual for me to be complaining about leads. And that, look, you know, I don't care if you send me 20, but send me 20 in the same, at least close to the area. You know, I didn't have a backlog of leads then like I do now. Today, if that happened, I wouldn't care. But you know, then you got to have people to go see. And so they got on Ryan about it. That Travis got with Eric. Eric, like I said, Eric's a stand-up guy. Eric's not going to have something like that happening. He's not going to have you unhappy, especially if you're producing for him. So the mandate that came from Eric and Travis, and you get your leads, as you know, you were at Equita, you get your leads on Saturday. Ryan and I had to have a conversation every Friday. to where are your leads for tomorrow? You know, are you okay with where I'm sending these? You know, basically, Ryan and I had to have a meeting of the minds every Friday. Needless to say, I certainly didn't look forward to those calls, and I'm sure Ryan didn't either. It was something we were both being made to do. And, but it was a good thing because over time it worked out. Ryan and I became really good friends doing that. And even after we got it worked out, we kept calling each other on Friday. Even though the mandate was over and everything was going good with the leads, we called each other Friday anyway. So we became really good friends. And just didn't start out that way. And, but that year, that was my last AEP. You know, what happened at that time too, and I was still writing quite a bit of Medicare Advantage early in that year. And then with the HIPAA, you know, with the Medicare rules, and then, but WellCare and Coventry decided to pull out of this area. And the Pyramid Today's Options had become a terrible plan by this time. So really the only thing in town was the Coventry and WellCare. WellCare was better than Coventry. Coventry had this one plan. It was a Medicare Advantage plan. It was $100 a month. Zero copay at the doctor, zero copay at the specialist, zero copay at the hospital, and a $1,000 move. It was basically a Medicare supplement for unhealthy people.
Right.
It was, and it was private fee for service, but it was being accepted everywhere. And but then they were pulling out of this area at the end of 2009. So I had a lot of people to go see. You know, those people were guaranteed issue into med subs with them leaving. But that does, you know, most people on Medicare Advantage are not people who are jumping into a med sub, especially the dual eligibles. And so I was referring my clients to another guy who was going to take care of the Medicare Advantage. I even took him around to some of them to let him write them, and he was writing a lot of Humana with them. Today, if you were into Medicare Advantage in this area, I'd probably have to write Humana, but since I'm not, I don't have to. But I cut my leads back to 15 a week at that point because I was going to be busy with him through that AEP. And then I never raised them back up from that point, and it kept on. And then things were great. I did, you know, I ended up writing $200,000 that year, and have every year since. If I make $200,000 this year, this will be my 10th consecutive year. So, like I said, I'm more about consistency than I am. I've never had a $300,000 year in this. But just on final expense. Probably got close to it last year with my other business. But, you know, I've never had a $300,000 year in final expense. So that's how, you know, when we get to that. And then everything was good and great. Loved to put folks at Equitech. Was great for me. We were having some problem in the areas I like to work at Equita. Like my favorite town to work, then, now, my city to work, I guess, whatever, they stopped mailing there because the returns, I guess Eric had told them you can't mail if it's a less than a 0.4% return. And they said in that area they couldn't get that. And my second favorite area to work, they also stopped mailing. But I wasn't doing without leads. I was just having to go different places I wanted to go. But I was paying $11 a lead because of my PPL under that system. And it was about to go down another $1. They also give you lead credits when you hit, like when I hit $500,000 with them, I got $1 off my lead. I was about to hit $1 million with them, and I would have got another $1 off my leads. So had I stayed at Equita, I would have been paying $10 leads instead of 11.